Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. So we will continue where we stopped off from our last class. So as I said in our last session, we have one rule and one line for this particular chapter. So we have Ahkam, which is as we know by now, the plural of hukum, so meaning the rules of the meme and the noon when it is al-mushaddadataini. So when the meme and the noon has a shadda. So sometimes when they translate this particular rule, they will translate it as the germinated, or what we often hear is when we double the letters. Because obviously, when you have a shadda on a letter, if we were to write that out, then that would mean that the first letter is with a sukoon, and then the second has a harakat, tanween, fatha, and so forth. So here, the term from the title of this chapter, again, it just means that we have two letters which are being doubled. And it's focusing on the two letters meme and noon. And the reason for that is obviously when we have the meme and the noon, they have, as we say, the intrinsic sifa. So the intrinsic attribute of having ghunna, and that ghunna becomes very pronounced when the two letters have a shadda. Okay, so very simple, very straightforward. So again, a shadda meaning that the same two letters have been combined. The first is sakin without a vowel, and the second is mutaharrik, as I said. So it's best when we obviously look at an example. So what I've done here is with the word thumma. So again, if we were to write that out, then we would see that the first letter is with a sukoon, and the second is mutaharrika. So obviously, instead of writing out each letter two times, the shadda serves the purpose of telling us to read that letter once, being with the sukoon, and then the second with the harakat. And that's important to understand as well, because when we look at rules like med lazim, and then we see that the condition of the elongation is that the letter of med is followed by a letter that has a permanent sukoon in the word, then we understand the role and the function of the shadda. Because the shadda contains the actual sukoon and then the harakat that follows it. So it's important to kind of understand that. All right, so as we continue, so as I said, this applies to all the letters in Arabic when they have a shadda on them. But because of the letters meme and noon, when they have the mark of shadda, in addition to saying that sound with two measures, we say it with the inherent characteristic of ghunna. So very simple. Thumma, anna, amma. And then another point for the students to take note of is regarding the form of shadda. And again, we'll take a look at the additions to the rasam, to the script of the mushaf, when we do the presentation of Sheikh Ayman Suwaid's slides, inshallah. So regarding the form of shadda, it actually comes from the word shadda itself. So if we have the letter sheen, then the dots have been removed and the tail has been removed as well. So then that gives us the form of the shadda by leaving only the top part of the letter. So that's actually where these actual, pardon me, where the shadda came from. And then the last thing that one needs to be aware of is that shadda, while it comes obviously in the middle of the word or at the end of the word, it can never come at the beginning of a word. If it is an original shadda, if it is an original shadda, because obviously, as we said, the shadda means that the first letter is sakina with a sukun. So we can't produce that speech sound if the first letter is with a shadda. So then what do I mean here? If it can never come at the beginning of a word, if it is an original shadda. So when will we see a shadda at the beginning of a word? So the only time that we'll see that is in our rule from the chapter of Nun Sakina and Tanween. So for example, when you have a Nun Sakina as the last letter of the first word, and then the next word, for example, starts with a meme or a noon, and we're going to make idgham, the ulama have put that shadda there to tell us that we are going to make a complete assimilation, idgham camel. So this is the only time where we will see a shadda at the start of a word. And so we obviously know that it's not an original shadda, and it's only been placed there for the particular rule that we're reading for. So as I said, there is only one line. So for those of you who are memorizing the lines for your ijaza, inshallah, this rule will be quite easy for you. And perhaps that will give you some extra time in the week to enforce your previous lines that you've been working on, inshallah. So the line here that we're going to look at, before that, if we take a look just at some very simple examples we have here. So, Mina Jinnati wan nas. Again, there are countless examples in the Mus'haf where we have a noon and a meme with shadda. Min nadhir, thumma lamma lahum min Allah. And again, you'll want to, if you have students, to have them read out these examples so that way you can ensure that they are pronouncing, that they are achieving the ghunna. So let's take a look at 917. 17, we have وَغُنَّ مِمَّن ثُمَّ نُونًا شُدِّدًا وَسَمِّ كُلًّا حَرْفَ غُنَّةٍ بَدًا. So the first part of the line, here we have a command verb, وَغُنَّ. So the author is saying, and make nasalization of what? Of the miman, of the letter meme, thumma, then the noon, when they are shuddida, when they are shuddida. So again, if you notice at the end of this particular word, we have an alif. We also have at the end of this line, second part of this line, an alif as well. So the alif that accompanies these two words should not be confused with the aliful itlaq, the general alif that is present at times just to ease the pronunciation for the mizan ashir. This particular alif that's at the end of the line is there because it's referring to the two letters, the meme and the noon, when they are shuddida. So this is the alif of the dual form in Arabic. So just to be aware of these subtleties, because your students may ask you, and as well you need to know the construction of the words. So even though someone doesn't have a lot of knowledge of the Arabic language, again, these small things that I'll point out during class and in the lines and that accompany the word for word translation will help you and to better understand the lines of the poem, inshallah. So he says, when they are with shadda, and then he gives us another command verb here. He says, wasammi, and name kullan, again, so name each of them. So he's referring back to the letter mim and the noon, a harf of a gunna, so a letter of nasalization. So that became clear, bada. So it's become clear that when these two letters have shadda, that we name them a letter of nasalization. And that's clear that these two letters have this particular characteristic. So only one line to memorize for this week, inshallah. And again, you have the word for word translation kept within the context of the poem. And then you have your second homework. I haven't received all of the first homework, so I'd like to receive that, please, every week before the start of the next class period, inshallah. So again, very simple homework, but there isn't too much homework that one can give on this particular point in the poem. So obviously, again, keeping in mind that you might have beginners in your course, or if you are a beginner in this course, this is from Surat al-Tariq. So you just need to go through and underline, highlight, circle those words where we apply ghunna only. And again, you have the imtihan. So these are questions that will come on the ijaza. Question number 1, I will ask you, what is the rule with regards to the noon and the meme when they are with a shadda? So the answer is very simple and straightforward. The rule is that we apply ghunna when these two letters have a shadda. And again, just keep in mind that they always have ghunna. We hear it at its greatest peak when it has shadda. Describe the term shadda and what it means. That question will not be on the ijaza, so it's only question 1. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to jump right into the next chapter. So we have the ahkam, the rules of the meme as-sakina. So again, we were looking at the chapter before the previous one for the rules of noon sakina. So now we'll take a look at the 3 rules for the meme sakina. So again, the rules of the meme when it is free from a vowel, free from a haraka. And we said when we are looking at the chapter of noon sakina and tanween that sakina means to be still, without motion. So again, it's referring to a meme that sits still and is at rest, meaning there is an absence of a haraka or tanween. And this is indicated by the presence of a sukun in the mushaf or an absence of a sukun to tell us that there is a rule other than idhar. And again, note that with the rules of the meme sakina, that the rules apply only between 2 words. So, in other words, when we have one meme sakina that is followed by another letter as the first letter of the next word. So if we take a look at the first rule, ikhfa. So again, ikhfa means to hide or to conceal. So when we're speaking about the meme sakina, it's when we have the letter ba and it follows the meme sakina, it will become concealed. So we will pronounce that letter meme between idhar and idgham, and we will apply ghunna and conceal it. So again, the sound of meme will become somewhat clear at the beginning, and then it will fade into the next letter. So the lips will come close to one another, barely touching, but then they stop right before one would close the lips, as if to pronounce the letter meme. And then the ba is clearly said. So if the lips did come together, then meme would be said with idhar instead of properly concealing the meme. And also, because the lips are involved in forming the letter meme, this rule is referred to as al-ikhfa al-shafawi. So that just means the labial or the lips concealment. So just to be aware of that as well. And again, notice in the Mus'haf, you will not find a sukoon over the letter meme. And that indicates to the reader that ikhfa is being made. So we can see that here in the Musahif from the Gulf, that there is an absence of a sukoon. So in the second example, you can see إليهم بعيدا excuse me إليهم بهدية. So then the second rule is idgham. So we already know from the chapter of Noon, Sakina, and Tanween that when we make idgham, we are going to assimilate or merge the sound into the next letter. So again, the first meme is assimilated into the second meme, and it's read as one letter, as one meme with a ghunna, and we hold that for two measures. We hold that for two measures. And with the shadda appearing on the second meme, this indicates to the reader that we're making a complete assimilation. So that first meme will not have any mark over it in the Mus'haf. So again, this particular assimilation is termed idgham mithlaini saghir. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, it's a minor assimilation that occurs with the same identical two letters. So the same two letters, two identical letters. So again, idgham meaning assimilation of two letters, and then mithlaini, which refers to two identical letters, the same two letters, and then saghir, which in this case, in the field of tajweed, refers to minor, refers to minor. So it refers to the first letter, which is sakin, and then the second letter, which is mutaharrik. So I just made a point here for the reader that it's important to recall that when the first letter of the second word has shadda, it means that the same two letters, again, have been combined or doubled or said twice. So the example that we have here, we can see وَلَكُمْ مَا. So that first meme has been left without a sukoon, and then the second has the shadda to tell the reader that the first meme is assimilated into the second meme. So we go straight from the letter kaf with a dhamma straight to the letter meme in the next word, and we hold that for two measures with ghunna. And again, we call this al-idgham al-shafawi. So the labial merging or assimilation. And again, it's due to the lips being involved in the forming of the letter. So very straightforward, very simple. So then that would put us into our third rule, which is idhar. So again, the rules of meme sakina are quite easy because you only need to remember two letters. When one meme, which is sakina, is followed by another meme, we assimilate. And then we only need to remember For al-ikhfa, the letter fa. So then that means the remaining 26 letters, the rule is applicable as idhar. So when we have that mim sakina and it comes before the remainder of the letters, which are 26, after we exclude the ba of ikhfa and the mim of al-idgham, when the meme is said clearly by completely closing the lips. And again, this is termed al-idhar al-shafawi, the labial clearness. And again, that's due to the lips being involved when we are articulating the letter meme. And we have many examples of this in the Mus'haf. And again, you'll want your students, particularly the beginners, to read through these examples just to check that they are applying the rule correctly. Because what sometimes happens to beginners and even intermediate students is that they're wanting to be very accurate and very cautious with their reading. So what can happen at times, instead of simply going from the meme into the wow, instead of just saying alayhim wala, they'll actually pause on that meme because they're focused on the meme and they're focused on producing a correct pronunciation. And then what they'll tend to do is they'll tend to bring more of a nasalization sound than what is needed, if that makes sense. So, for example, they would say, alayhim wala. So they've held the meme for too long and they've brought the sound into the nasal cavity. So just to be aware of some subtleties, because as you are progressing through your studies and as you are developing as a student, and then inshallah, if you develop as a teacher, what will happen along the way, inshallah, is that your ear will start to become attuned to these small things that you'll want to weed out from your reading and from your students' reading. And particularly if a student has a very quick um, method of or pace of reciting, then some of those things can be a little bit more difficult to catch. This one would be easier because the student would pause or press too long, hold the makhraj of the meme, whereas other things will be less obvious. So just to be aware of some of these issues that will come up with your future students, bi'ithnillah. So before we go into the lines of the poem for this particular chapter, in line 18, Al-Jamzuri, he mentions the alif layna. So before we explain the rules, we'll just briefly define and talk about the alif layna. So alif layna literally means a soft or flexible alif. And this alif will immediately come after any letter that is with fatha. So such as ba or sa. And we call it soft or flexible because it takes on the characteristic of the letter preceding it. So if a letter is pronounced lightly, as with the letter ba, then the alif will be brought forth lightly. And then if it's preceded by a letter that is pronounced with heaviness, such as sod, for example, then the alif itself is also pronounced heavily. So Al-Jamzuri in the first line, he specifically mentions that the meme sakina cannot come before an alif layna. And this is because the alif itself is always sakin. Although in the Mus'haf, they don't put the sukoon over the alif, but we understand that the state of the alif is sakin. And obviously, the rule in Arabic is that two letters which have a sukoon cannot come together in the Arabic language, except in the case of waqf, if one is stopping, then it's not possible that an alif layina, which is always with sukoon, follows the mim sakina, or any other letter for that matter. And the same is applicable to the other two letters of elongation, the waw and the ya, as both of them are with sukoon. And again, we're speaking about when the ya and the mim are in a state of elongation, not when they are in their other state of mutaharrika. And sometimes students have asked me in the past, why did Al-Jamzuri state the obvious? Because it's quite obvious or clear that you cannot have a mim sakina or any other letter that is sakina before an alif. And my response to that is perhaps, Allahu Alam, perhaps again, this poem, it was written for children, and he might have just made a point of that so that the students wouldn't have any confusion as to how alif can occur, where it can come attached to. So we don't really have a straightforward explanation of that particular reason. And it may just be something as simple as when he started the line and he states that the alif can come before all of the other letters except an alif layina, just to add in that clarification, just to add in that clarification. So we'll go ahead and we'll start here with line 18. He says, وَالْمِيمُ إِن تَسْكُنْ تَجِي قَبْلَ الْهِجَاءِ لَا أَلِفٍ لَيِّنَةٍ لِذِي الْحِجَاءِ. So he says, وَالْمِيمُ. So the meme in taskun, when it is free from a what? Free from a vowel, taji, and it's coming قبل الهجاء, and it's coming before the letters of the alphabet, except what? And then he says, لا ألف لينة, but not before a soft alif, لذي الحجة. So the one who possesses intellect, لذي الحجة. So again, li is a harfu jar here, and it means for, and the is the possessor of owner. And the al-hija is the one who possesses intellect. So the one who possesses intellect will understand that you cannot have a mim sakina before an alif. And again, you'll want to take care of the footnotes in the in each section. So if we look at footnote 112, we see the form of this present tense verb is actually spelled as taji. But again, that hamza has been dropped to maintain the rhythmic style of the poem. Okay, again, remember, you might have advanced students in your class as well, and they're going to look at some of these words and they're going to say, isn't there a hamza missing? Part of the word has been removed, or the harakat has been changed. And you're going to want to be able to explain that to your students. And the same applies to that word al-hija, because the actual word is al-hija with a hamza at the end. So the one who possesses intellect will understand we cannot have two sukoons meeting. And then line 19, he says, أحكامها ثلاثة لمن ضبط إخفاء إدغام وإظهار فقط. So then he says أحكامها, its rules. It's referring again to the mim sakina are thalatha. They are three. Liman, for whom, dabat. For the one who is precise. For the one who is precise. And they are ikhfa, idgham, and idhar faqat, only. So again, if you noticed, the hamza is missing from the word idgham in the line of poetry here. So again, this is read as I stated here. So what we do is we carry over, we make a naql, we transfer, we make naql, we transfer that noon sound, and we put a sukoon on the dal. So إخفاء ندغام وإظهار. So when you recite the poem for your ijaza, you will want to recite it like that. You will not say إخفاء إدغام. You will recite it إخفاء إدغام وإظهار فقط. And that application is also seen when we are reciting Al-Quran. Again, we are preventing the two sukoons of meeting. Okay, and if we go into line 20, he will tell us the first rule. So he says, فالأول الإخفاء قبل الباء وسميه الشفوية للقراء. So the first what? The first hukam is al-ikhfa, is concealment. When? قبل الباء, before the letter ba. And then he gives us again a command verb. وسميه الشفوية, and name it, the concealment, labial, للقراء, for the reciters or the readers. And again, take note of the footnotes. In some copies, you will find عند الباء is written. But because Al-Jamzuri himself used the word qabla, it's also been used here in the line. Again, different sheikh and sheikhat have looked at this poem and felt perhaps there needed to be a change of the harakat, or in this particular case, they felt that inda was more suitable to use within the Arabic language because there is a linguistic difference between qabla and inda, right? Qabla means before, inda can mean at or beside or with, depending how it's used in the sentence. And then again, the actual word for labial is shafawi, but sukoon has been placed on the letter fa. And again, this is for that rhythmic style of the poem. And with line 21, he gives us the second rule. So he says, وَالثَّانِي إِدْغَامٌ بِمِثْلِهَا أَتَى وَسَمِّ إِدْغَامًا صَغِيرًا يَا فَتَى. And the second hukum is assimilation. بِمِثْلِهَا أَتَى. So here بِمِثْلِ means by its identical. So again, it's meaning another meme ata, another meme that came. Wasammi, and name it. Here's our command verb again. And name it idghaman saghiran, a minor assimilation. Ya fata, O young person, O young person. And again, the footnote. Fata means a young person or adolescent, but it can also refer to anyone who wants to learn. And then if we go up to line 22, he tells us the third rule. So he says, والثالث الإظهار في البقية من أحرف وسميها شفوية. So, and the third is clearness. In what? في البقية. In the remainder من أحرف. In the remainder of the letters. وسميها, and there's our command verb, and name it شفوية, and name it labial. So now he's given you in each of the lines, each of the rules are the rules for mim sakina. And then line 23, he wants to caution the reader. So he says, واحذر لدى واو وفاء تختفي لقربها والاتحاد فاعرفي. So he says, واحذر, and beware. So this is again a cautionary word. واحذر, beware لدى واو وفاء أن تختفي. Beware, beware near the letters wow and the fa, that they might become concealed. And تختفي. And why does he give us that warning? He says, لقربها, for its nearness to the letter fa. So again, some knowledge. There needs to be some knowledge here about the makharij of the letters. So the ba, the waw, the mim, and the fa are all labial letters. So he says, be careful for the qurbiha, for its nearness to the letter fa. Walittihadi, and the oneness of the letter waw, because the letter waw and the mim share the same makhraj, so that you don't conceal it. So he says, ta'rifi. And again, you'll want to stretch the ending here to match the ending of takhtafi, ta'rifi. So line 23 is just that cautionary advice that he is giving the reader. So if we take a look at the example here, we have a mim sakina, and it's followed by the letter fa. So if one doesn't stop and close the lips properly and pronounce whom before moving in to pronouncing the letter fa, concealment can occur. So with idhar, we would say الذي هم فيه. But if one doesn't take the time or is rushing their recitation, or mistakes because we err and we are human, الذي هم فيه. So I didn't completely close my lips when I pronounced it in the second time I read it. So I went too quickly, and it sounded as if I was concealing the meme rather than pronouncing it with har. So this is why he gives the caution. Just because they come from the same place of articulation, the lips. So this was the reason for the wahdar. So alhamdulillah, the chapter of Mim Sakina was also fairly short, very simple and straightforward chapter, alhamdulillah. So again, you have the word for word translation. And then for your homework, for this particular chapter, I want the students to take the rules for Mim Sakina from Suratul Mutaffifin and identify the rule. So the first example I gave you, kaluhum. So the rule here is idhar. So you'll just simply write the word, and then you'll write, is it ikhfa, idhar, or idgham? And then for the imtihan, again, these are questions for you for your ijaza. So again, what does the first line of the poem mean with regards to the mim sakina. And what is alif layna? What is alif layna? So it's a soft, flexible alif. And of course, how many rules are there for mim sakina? So you'll want to describe them and give a simple example. So there are three rules: idhar, ikhfa, idgham. And then you should be able to provide an example for each rule, inshallah. And then the fourth question, what does the author warn the reciter from? And what's the reason for this warning? So again, that will be a question for the ijaza. I don't I don't make surprises, if you will, when I have my students sit for their ijaza. Um, I tell the students exactly what is going to be on the ijaza because it's based upon what we are studying. Alhamdulillah. So, very simple, very straightforward questions, and they're all based on the text. Alhamdulillah. On Sunday, we have a very short chapter to go through as far as the um, the content, because obviously all of the students in this program are already reading from the Mus'haf and they are familiar with the rules of the lam of al and the lam of the fi'l, the lam of the verb. So it's usually a pretty quick chapter that we tend to go through. And we mainly just point out a few things along the way before we go into the lines, alhamdulillah. So, inshallah, what we'll do now is I will stop the recording. And for those of you who wish to recite your lines, can do so, inshallah.